This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. John Bailey with my partners of the last 7 years, Jim Benerofe and Peter Katz, and this is White Plains Week. Jim, the headlines.
And here are the headlines for the week of September 16th, 2016. Judge rules the Kenneth Chamberlain $21 million civil suit against White Plains can proceed to trial. Hillary Clinton opens headquarters in White Plains. The Hillary and Friends Trump Today update continues. George Latimer and Julie Killian engage in Senate District 37 contest, differ sharply on term limits, mandates, education, in 2 interviews on People to be Heard. Assemblyman David Buchwald and 31 other Assembly members demand New York stop accepting fracking process waste from other states. Job growth up in Westchester County in 1 year. Steve Morton, White Plains Renaissance man, opens one-man show Painted Ladies exhibit in Ossining. State unveils offshore wind master plan, examines 16,740 square miles of Atlantic Ocean for wind project sites. Details 2017. Tappan Zee Bridge almost completes southern span to open end of 2018. Jonathan Joseph, White Plains teacher and White Plains High School graduate of 1996, honored with Super Teacher Award. White Plains Library Foundation received $25,000 to fund First to Go to College bilingual program starting in October for parents and students. White Plains honors the legacy of 9/11.
Right, thank you, Jim. And now we see our first slide. That was the big story. It's also the shocker of the week. A decision came down as on a really big case. Peter, tell us all about it.
Well, John, U.S. District Judge Kathy Sabel ruled that the $21 million wrongful death lawsuit filed by the family of Kenneth Chamberlain can proceed to trial. She set November 7th for the trial to begin. She ruled that defendants would be the City of White Plains and police officer Anthony Corelli. He's the policeman who fired the fatal shot. Other policemen who the Chamberlains wanted to include in the case were excused by the judge. The city had asked the judge for a summary judgment throwing out the case, but she said no. On November 19th, 2011, White Plains Police received a call that Kenneth Chamberlain's medical alerting device had activated. They went to his apartment at 135 South Lexington Avenue. Chamberlain, a retired corrections officer, had been drinking. He refused to let the police in, but they insisted on checking to see if he was okay. He became agitated and still refused to let the police in. So the police tried to force open the door. They said he became increasingly upset and threatening. Police said he attacked them with a cleaver and a large knife. They tried to subdue him with a stun gun and a weapon which fired beanbags. Eventually, Officer Corelli shot him. At the federal courthouse on Quoropa Street, the judge heard from both sides in a packed courtroom before announcing her decision to allow a trial to begin in November.
Randolph McLaughlin, one of the attorneys for the Chamberlain family, had this reaction.
At long last, the search for truth and the search for justice for Mr. Chamberlain will unfold in this courthouse before a jury of his peers. And we look forward to the opportunity to present the evidence that we have amassed that we believe will conclude that the city of White Plains is responsible for the death of Mr. Chamberlain and that defendant Corelli is also responsible for the death of Mr. Chamberlain. We fully believe that that is the conclusion a jury will reach after it has heard the evidence that we will present.
It's kind of hard to really put into words.
Take your time, bro. Take a breathe, baby. Breathe, baby.
You got this, man.
Father's proud, baby.
But we finally are getting.
Right down.
Let it move, man.
Let the world see it.
Spirit move.
That's all right. Let the world see it.
What you doing? We're finally getting our day in court.
Yes. Yes.
I'm pleased with the decision that the judge made to say that there is sufficient evidence. This is something that we have been saying the entire time. I'm asking the Department of Justice again to come to the city of White Plains, investigate the police department, not just for civil rights violations against the citizens out here in this city, but even in their own department. To the elected officials in White Plains, I just simply say, what say you now that the judge has said that there's enough evidence to move forward? Will you now admit wrongdoing, or will you still stand by this lie that you've been telling the entire time?
Man up. That's right.
There will be justice for Kenneth Chamberlain Sr.
What this trial will focus on like a laser beam is what was happening at the moment that Officer Corelli shot Mr. Chamberlain. And we believe, and the judges said, that we've established sufficient information in the record to move to trial, to put this question to a jury. We believe that the use of excessive force in regard to the beanbag shotguns put Mr. Chamberlain on the ground. That, I want to say that clearly. We are going to put before the jury evidence that Mr. Chamberlain was on the ground after being brought down by the force of 4 shots from a beanbag shotgun that the city's own information says is equal to the force of a punch from Mike Tyson or a fastball by a pitcher in the major leagues. And that this man, who had serious health problems, which the jury will hear about, could not possibly have bounced up like some sort of low-flying superhero after being felled to the ground to continue to be a threat to anyone in that room. And that's what we're going to focus on, is to show that at the time that he was shot, Mr. Chamberlain was on the ground and a threat to no one.
I asked McLaughlin if a trial like this here in White Plains would have national implications.
Yes, we think that it's quite clear that Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. And if Mr. Chamberlain had not been African American, had not been suffering from a mental issues, had not been living in a housing project which is perceived as a dangerous place by some, then he'd be alive today. I doubt very seriously any police department would have broken into his house, took his door down if he lived in Scarsdale and was a doctor. So it's class, race, and mental issues. So yes, it's a national issue.
Now, McLaughlin said that they'd be amenable to a settlement with the city of White Plains rather than going to trial if White Plains wants to talk about it. Now, representatives of White Plains who were in court were not available to talk with the press afterwards. John?
Thank you, Peter. Well, what do you think, Jim? Do you think they should settle?
Well, it's always easier to settle than to go through a court case. Or whether they should do it or not, I don't know.
Peter, any thoughts on that?
I don't know enough about it. I have not looked at the evidence, and I think as it gets closer to trial and as
that's when it usually happens.
That's when it usually happens. Sometimes you have a settlement taking place after the evidence has been presented to a jury, and both sides then try to get a sense of how the verdict will go. and then they talk settlement. So it may be premature to expect there to be a settlement.
Right. And right now, the campaign moves along. We have the Trump Today and Hillary and Friends segment, and one of those segments involved Hillary Clinton, and that took place in White Plains. Peter was there.
Well, actually,
and so was Jim.
The campaign did come to White Plains. It was just yesterday when the Democratic National Committee opened a Hillary Clinton presidential campaign office in White Plains Thursday evening.
It's in a storefront at 168 Martine Avenue. Among the party dignitaries on hand for the opening was State Senate Democratic leader Andrea Stewart Cousins, who reminisced about the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia this summer.
When the message was hate on one side, building walls, talking about how scared we are, how fearful we have to be of the other. On the Democratic side, we were talking about how we're going to bring down the barriers, bring down the walls, bring up our people, bring up our country, and we're going to do it because we're focused on commitment, on compassion, on passion, progress, and progressivity.
Among the others speaking, State Assemblyman David Buchwald and Amy Paulin, and Congresswoman Nita Lowey, who talked about Trump's candidacy.
This is not a TV reality show. This is not someone who says, well, when I'm president, I'm going to be presidential. It's really frightening to all the leaders of the free world that this man is polling so well and could possibly be elected. It is really a wake-up call to every one of us, and what a great turnout this is. I've known Hillary Clinton, as many of you wonderful volunteers and all my good friends, all our elected officials know, but this woman is so prepared. I worked with her when she was Secretary of State. She will be the most prepared, knowledgeable person to ever hold this job. Yeah, ever hold this job. And what made me so angry, I mean, every day there's something else that makes me angry about what Trump is doing and what he's saying, but I ran into a group that were educated people who started telling me how they don't trust her and this, oh, we'll roll the dice and vote for Trump. Well, I gave them a good talking to. Roll the dice with the United States of America?
Now, just this morning, the campaign is about to enter a new phase. As we're recording this program, Trump is speaking in Washington, D.C., and he is expected to announce in the speech, voila, he now believes that President Obama was born in the United States.
That's born in the USA.
Yeah, now this is after years of him being a leader of the birther movement, claiming that Obama is an illegitimate president, and that he was really born in Kenya, not in Hawaii. It comes at a time when it serves to push off the front page a Newsweek magazine story, which was really an expose of Trump's dealings with dictators, corrupt politicians, and huge foreign-owned corporations, in which Newsweek raised questions about whether he'd be making decisions as president in the interest of Trump and the Trump Organization or the interest of the United States. Hillary Clinton got back on the campaign trail after a bout with pneumonia. She spoke in Greensboro, North Carolina. She said she's feeling a lot better. Donald Trump went on the Dr. Oz show. He said the idea was to reveal his health record, and he produced this. It's a new letter from Trump's doctor. I looked at it, Dr. Oz looked at it. Dr. Oz said it's wonderful, it shows he's in perfect health. And looking at this, now I'm a layperson, although I do have some medical background. I worked for a medical products company at one time. but I'm not a doctor. But even not being a doctor, I can look at this letter and see that no doctor in his right mind could possibly decide anything about a patient based on what's in the letter because it's incomplete.
Does he say he can referee soccer?
Yeah, no, it doesn't say. It doesn't say that.
Not clear to that.
It reports on his last physical. It doesn't give a date of a physical. It leaves out important functions such as heart rate, respiration. It says nothing about eyes or ears. It says nothing about blood workup. Says nothing about kidney function. There are so many things that are not in this letter. I don't see how Dr. Oz can say that this is great and it proves that he's in perfect health.
Well,
in any event,
that's Dr. Oz's opinion.
What this whole health thing and the Bertha thing do, they keep off the front page the fact that Trump still hasn't released his tax returns.
And keeps the Newsweek stuff off the page.
And amazingly this week, Paul Ryan, the Republican Speaker of the House, says Trump should release his tax returns. Amazing.
Paul Ryan turning more left by the day.
Also this week we learned that the emails, private emails, former Secretary of State Colin Powell have been hacked. They were released. Some of them, he said, among other things in his emails, he considers Trump to be a pariah, but he also was not necessarily favorable toward Hillary Clinton.
HRC, as he calls her.
And to top it all off this week, a new CBS New York Times poll came out which shows that in a 4-person race, it is neck and neck. Both Clinton and Trump are tied with 42% of the vote. In a 2-way race, Clinton leads 46% to 42%.
Yes, and I would like to read from this very evil red book. It is Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler. And I want to read what Adolf Hitler says about propaganda. Propaganda, in its contents and form, has to be directed at the great masses, and its efficiency has to be measured exclusively by its effective success. At a meeting of the broad layers of a people, not that speaker speaks best whose mentality is nearest to the intelligentsia present, but he who conquers the heart of the masses.
In other words, facts don't matter, legitimate arguments don't matter, it's emotion.
And that comes from this book, and everybody should read it. Mein Kampf.
Yeah, speaking of emotions were running high in White Plains on election news this week.
Right.
And we also want to mention that there are some local elections. It's not all the presidential race. On the program People to Be Heard, we have been following the race for state senate in the 37th district. And this week, the guest is George Latimer, who is the incumbent. And you can see that program on these same cable stations. Check your local newspaper for time and station. I always wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Of course, there aren't many local newspapers left where you
time
can
and
do
station,
that.
right.
Yes. Or go online, whiteplainsweek.com, or on YouTube. You can see all of our programs there.
Right. And
David Buchwald, the state assemblyman, joined with a bunch of his colleagues.
Yeah, and he told us something we did not know.
That New York State has been accepting waste from fracking operations outside of New York State.
Yes.
And he and his colleagues say it's time to put a stop to accepting this fracking waste.
Yes.
They also want to say no to anchoring barges in the Hudson.
Well, that's the county legislature that did that.
There is a proposal floating around now, endorsed by the Army Corps of Engineers, to have 10 anchorages in the Hudson River between Albany and the New York Harbor for barges.
Hopefully they will be well lighted at night.
Now going across the Hudson River is the new Tappan Zee Bridge. And John, we learned something new from the Tappan Zee Bridge folks this week.
Yes, what they have said is that they've completed most of the southern span, and they will finish that off when they start eliminating the new bridge.
So Jim,
the old bridge,
we'll be able to drive across this new bridge in 2018, so they say.
Late
right
in 2018. Late in 2018.
Is this going to be a first, getting a state project finished on time?
Maybe.
Well, this is a Cuomo project, so it will be finished on time. Either that, or they walk them off the bridge.
Yeah, they walked the plank.
They walk the plank.
Not finished on time, or not finished yet, is an art exhibit up in Ossining with by a local artist.
Yes, there he is. Your pal, Steve Morton, Jim Benerofe, and he has come up with an intriguing new medium. He paints models and then...
Nude models.
Yes. Nude? I didn't know that.
We're allowed to say that on television?
Yes. But anyway, and he is... This exhibition of 27 paintings, Steve came up with this concept 6 years ago on a dare. Someone who was painting a body said, well, if you think it's so easy, you try it. And so he did. And he has spent a couple of years perfecting the technique. And this was the scene up in the Steam Gallery in Ossining. Next slide, please.
That's on Main Street in Ossining, right?
Right.
Yes.
It's a converted firehouse.
And if you want to mingle with Steve Morton, next slide, please. There you go. Just, you have to call the Steam Gallery for an appointment, and you can also get more info on the website www.info@stephenemorton.com, and I received no compensation for that announcement.
I'm glad you said
He's
that.
a great guy, and it's great stuff.
And Jim, did you take any bribes? I didn't take any bribes to get that on you. So
No, but he's a local guy. Everybody knows him. He's shot the rich and the famous and the important people of this area, and this is what he does.
A great
as hobby.
photographer.
Great, and a really concept guy.
And I've been associated with him for 35 years.
Right. And now we celebrate that's celebrated. We observed.
Well, we should mention
We
this
should
business
mention
about the windmills, and actually, if you watch this program on a regular basis, you'll know that we showed a couple of weeks ago off of Block Island. They have a 5-windmill farm in place, almost ready to start generating electricity for Block Island. And John has discovered that the state has a master plan of its own to do this off of New York State.
This was buried deep in the Journal News this morning. It was a release from the state, and they have come up with a master plan for wind projects on 16,800 square miles. This is an astounding amount of space. Boy, that's going to be really great, navigating through those.
And very quickly, Jim, we want to mention the Library Foundation, some money coming into the Library Foundation.
That's right, $25,000. Right, and this is to fund a program to help parents and students who are the first ones in the family to go to college and who are bilingual. Also, if you speak English, you can participate in the program too, to navigate about it. But right now, I just want to say that this was the week we observed the 9/11 attacks.
Indeed, John. Yeah, this past Sunday, the whole country marked the 15th anniversary of the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon and the downing of Flight 93 at Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And here in White Plains, there was a memorial ceremony that, John, you attended at Liberty Park on Lake Street overlooking Silver Lake.
There's a monument in the park to the 6 White Plains residents who died at the World Trade Center: Sharon Balcombe, Marissa DiNardo, Hermanth Kumar Patur, Joe Reverso, Gregory Rodriguez, and Linda Sheehan. White Plains Parks Commissioner Wayne Bass gave the opening remarks at the ceremony.
Let us give voice to our desire for peace and commit ourselves to helping others, encouragement of patriotism, and love for our great country.
The White Plains Fire Department sounded a fire bell in 4 rounds of 5 chimes each, a traditional way fire departments honor a deceased member of the force. Zaida Rio, a White Plains middle school student, performed the national anthem.
For the land and the home of the brave.
Rabbi Lester Bronstein of Temple Bet Am Shalom offered a prayer.
Let us overcome the fear of each other's motives. Let us strive together. Let us hold our hands together through these tears of memory, of sadness, of forlornness. Let us hold our arms together and rebuild your world.
Stefania Mignon, Deputy Commissioner of the White Plains Public Works Department, was among the speakers.
I had traveled the world when I was in high school and in college and felt some sort of security always with me. That feeling was shattered that day.
Tim Ryan, Deputy Chief of the White Plains Fire Department, recalled how he and others volunteered in the wake of the Twin Towers collapse.
If you go to a picnic and take a big sheet cake and a mountain of ants come and attack it, and they take a little piece at a time, that's what it was like for us to move the debris pile at ground zero. After those few days, working tirelessly, coming home, dusty, dirty, looking up in the sky, not seeing a plane, saying our world has changed forever. We knew that. We knew the demands on our military, our police, our fire, EMS, were now going to go to a different height, different level. We were going to have to train and be prepared for things that we never thought that we'd have to encounter, such as chemical attacks and so on and so forth. What I reflect on back most from this, I can't express to you the unity of America, how close and tight-knit we became as a country, as a state, as local residents.
Now, Mayor Roach also addressed the gathering, and members of the Common Council placed a wreath honoring the 9/11 victims. And, you know, one thing that I noticed from the video you shot, John, is that the turnout really was not as big as you might think it would be.
Yeah.
15th anniversary, long time. It was a very moving ceremony,
really
and you would think that more White Plains residents would be interested in showing respect by attending.
Jim, you were there. You're impressed?
Yeah, I thought it was a small turnout, but I think that some people that I talked to said that the turnouts over the years have been smaller.
I think back to right after 9/11, there was a big march, a demonstration from the train station down to City Hall.
7,000
You had
people.
7,000 people at least participating, and now you're down to a handful 15 years later.
And
we shouldn't forget these things.
No, we shouldn't. John Bailey, for Peter Katz, Jim Benerofe. Good night.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.